I'd rather be with you. Yeah.
Welcome to Good Vibes Radio. My name is Alice and I'm the CEO of The Family. At The Family, we believe that anyone can become an entrepreneur. So we bring education, tools, and access to capital to hundreds of entrepreneurs every year. You may have heard of Algolia, Payfit, Each, or Agricool, for instance. And since the beginning of the confinement, I started with my team Good Vibes Radio in order to keep that precious bond with our community and to invite and discover entrepreneurs. Usually I invite founders from the family, but today I have a very, very, very special guest. His name is Riccardo, and Riccardo just started king.com and we're going to learn about his past. We're going to learn about how it's been for Riccardo during this confinement. And of course, I told Riccardo the main purpose of this good vibe is to share some good vibes and to share some optimism, and you can ask all of your questions. So you see in the chat on the right, everybody, you can say hello and ask any question that you want. How are you, Riccardo?
Hi to everyone. Very well, thank you.
Yeah.
In isolation in London.
Can you show us around? Where are we exactly right now with you?
Okay, so I'm now in a place I'm renting because I used to have a flat, but it burned down. So it's a temporary place. But okay, let me show you. So I can show you how I do confinement now. The first thing is I got something which is really cool, actually. Peloton bikes.
Cool.
And this is a rower. Usually it has to stand the other way around. And you can see it.
Yeah.
And then since I'm a gamer, then I recently bought something which is quite fun. This is my fun corner here. You can see this is the chair for doing some virtual car racing. And here are my consoles. And I have a couple of consoles here to play with.
So nice. You've been enjoying your confinement then?
Well, I mean, for as much as you can enjoy it, really. Trying to make... Actually, no, it's not too bad. And I'm trying to learn to play piano, which is here in the back. But at least it's not mine because it's a bit too advanced.
Oh, yeah? So you started really learning piano?
Yeah, months ago started. I think it was always one of my dreams to learn to play piano. So I said, you know what? This is the perfect time. So
okay,
keeping busy.
Nice. I won't ask you to play for us, right?
No, not now.
No.
If you want to have an optimist feel in this call, definitely not.
All right. Okay. So Riccardo, let's start by the beginning. Okay. So you are an Italian entrepreneur and you started king.com. How did it all start? Can we go back to the very beginning? When did you decide to become an entrepreneur?
Well, then we have to start really early on because it was always one of my dreams to be an entrepreneur. The only small problem is that I had no clue what to do. And so basically my father was a dentist. He was an entrepreneur basically, and he gave me this passion for being your own master and not to having to answer to others. And so this was always my dream, but I had no idea what to do. So basically my whole life has been more or less at the beginning a search for what to do. And on the other hand, trying not to close doors too early. That's why I studied economics because...
In Italy?
In Italy, yeah. Then I went to work in Germany in consulting. And then finally, in 1999, with the big internet boom, I jumped ship and I joined a startup called Spray. We were actually also in France, and it was quite big also in France, in Paris. We did one of the most amazing parties for the opening of Spray in Paris, actually. And it was an online portal, and we went from 20 people to basically 800 people in 1 year. And then we had to sell in 2000 because the company was not making money. We had quite a few users, but
what was it doing, Spray?
It was an online portal, basically similar to Yahoo.
Yeah, okay.
But was very much focused on communities. We had a search engine, communities, and that's where we also started doing the first games. We had also a game channel.
But you were not an engineer, so you were just on the you were on the business side.
Yeah, basically, I started the German office or the German operations of Spray. So I recruited a team. We were about 100 people at the time in Germany, and that's actually was one of the most important experiences I had in my life, because that's where I made, first of all, a lot of mistakes. One of which I basically, we were focused very much on going public, doing an IPO. And so everything was focused on building reach, building users. Then later, the targets changed for the IPO to making revenues, generating revenues. And then in the last moment, it was making profits. And so it kind of broke the company, because we spent all the money, more or less. But so that's one thing. So from there, I learned that it's really important from the very first moment to focus actually on being profitable. Because once you're profitable, you can really do what you think is right. You don't have to do what others want you to do. And if you don't do it, then you don't get the money, basically. So
Good lesson.
yeah. And the second thing, why it was really important, is that I learned also a lot in terms of how to manage very difficult situations with a team of 100 people, because at some point the money was finished, so we had to what shall I tell the team, and so I learned that what is really important in difficult situations is always to tell the truth, and treat your people like adults, and secondly also that you always should treat them as you want to be treated yourself. So, and then many people afterwards I stayed in contact and were very useful when we started King, because some of the people I had to fire, unfortunately, then became my partners when I started King, making my life much easier. So, I try to treat always people, even though they're in difficult situations. And the third reason why it was so important is that I met there my co-founders. So, as you said earlier, basically, if I can become an entrepreneur, anyone can become an entrepreneur, really, because I didn't know how to do anything. So what I did is, if you don't know how to code and how to design a product and so on, then the most important thing is to bring on board the best people that you can think of. And so we had 800 people in Spray at the end, and I asked the best, in my opinion, who were the former CTO of Spray, the former chief creative officer of Spray, who created the products, and some of the best developers, and two of the best developers in the company, basically, to join. And that's how we started, really. And without that experience, it would have never been possible. And I remember very well that when we sold Spray and I left Spray, many other people also left. But they went back to consulting or back to banking and so on. I said, look, I did the most expensive master in the world. I would be really stupid if I went back into consulting. And so that was basically the start of my entrepreneurial journey.
Yeah, you joined Benchmark Capital as the entrepreneur in residence.
Yeah, that's right. I received an offer to join Benchmark, and at the beginning I refused the offer because it seemed to be too good to be true. They told me basically, look, you can join if you come over to London. The only requirement is really to come to London. But if you come to London, we give you a salary, you can use the office, and if there is a good idea, then we can invest in it. And so I refused it. I said, look, I don't want to be forced to get an investment because maybe the terms are not right. And then they assured me that there is no obligation to take an investment from them. I can go anywhere. And so I said, okay, well, then it's really good. It's great. So I left Germany. I went to London. I spent about a year there looking for different business opportunities, business ideas. But before joining, I left I took 6 months off, and to collect ideas. So when I joined Benchmark, I came in with about 50 ideas. One of these ideas was to do online dating. And we're talking about the year 2000. So at the time there was no online dating. There was in continental Europe. There was only free dating. There was no paid dating service like Match or similar. And so my idea at the time was, okay, let's do paid dating, a subscription model in Europe, in continental Europe. And while I was at Benchmark, I looked into different opportunities to do that. One was to develop it from the scratch, build a new company. The second one was to buy different companies that were offering free services, free dating, like we did at the time. And the third option was to invest in an existing company. And so we went for the third option. So we made an offer to a British company called UDate that was operating in the US and in the UK, but not in continental Europe because there was no one. And then we made them an offer. They refused the offer, and they made me an offer to join. So that's the year where also Mythique started. Yeah? So this was more or less in the same time. So it was really, really early on. And I joined, and I was busy to build out the European market. But 3 months after I joined, the founder sold the company. So I said, damned, I had a package of options, which was only partially in the money. But nevertheless, it was good because until then I didn't make any money. So with that money was fundamental. I left then UDate after having handed over the job to the buyer, which was Match.com, which then
How much money you made?
So I made about £350,000 net of tax. And that was actually fundamental because, I worked before for about 10 years in consulting. No, actually 8 years in consulting. So I saved some money, but London is a very expensive place.
Yeah.
So basically, when we started King, I and one of my co-founders, Toby, put in the money and funded basically the initial start of the operation with my co-founders in Sweden, working at much lower rates than normal. And then and that's basically how we started. And so I went all in. I put in basically all the money I made. And anyway, it was easy because I had no family, no kids. I had a girlfriend, but no family, no kids. And then soon also after, no girlfriend either.
No responsibility.
Yeah, it wasn't easy to live in London with no money and no place really. So, but the first thing I did was to reduce all the costs to zero. So I gave away my rental flat, I gave away my car, and I moved in the guest bedroom of a friend of mine for about 2 years. He was a very good friend. In Italy they say that guests are like fish. After 3 days they smell. So imagine after 2 years. But he was a very good friend, and that's how we started the operation.
And so at the very beginning of King, the idea, so it was not named King, it was Midas Player or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's right. At the beginning, we started with the URL midasplayer.com, and
why Midas Player? What did you mean by that?
Midas, it's like King Midas, and Player because it was a game site, and the initial idea was to offer on the web a collection of games where you could compete against others in one level, let's say, of Candy Crush, for example. Yeah, we didn't have Candy Crush at the time, but that's similar games. And in a 3-minute competition with 2, 3, or 4 other players, you would then compete, and the best player would basically then win a pot of money, which was basically the entry money. And we would retain a percentage of that play. And the games were all games, basically short, fun games of pure skill. And this is basically how we started. And with this model, we became profitable a year and a half later, and we grew the company to about 100 people. We started the company with distribution partnerships. We had no money for marketing, so all the money went into the product. And
people could play the games on their browser.
Yes, that's right. Online. So it was not a download model; it was an online model. You would play in real time with others, or also, you would play always against real people. And we started marketing the website through partnerships. So basically, I traveled around Europe and around the US. To close distribution partnerships. One of our first partners was Deutsche Telekom, T-Online, and so they signed the first contract, and after that it became much easier because one after the other we signed all the partners in Germany, then Also, we signed a few partners in France and in the US. Our largest partner was Yahoo. We signed a very large contract with Yahoo in the US and in Europe. And with that, we basically grew very, very fast. And everything went really well until Facebook started growing massively back in 2008, 2009. And that's where we had some really big problems, because suddenly Yahoo lost 45% of their traffic because of Facebook. And so then we had to reinvent ourselves. And it took us about 2.5 years to reinvent ourselves. And we're really with the back to the wall there.
2.5 years.
Mm-hmm.
So during 2.5 years, you and your 100 employees were experimenting things to search how to come back on the market.
Those were the toughest years of my life, because I was kind of squeezed in the middle. On one side, I had to manage the team, when other companies were growing on Facebook, also here in London. You had to retain the best, or retain the people. And I did that from learnings from the past, telling them the truth, saying like, we're still profitable because we have some loyal customers, but it's only a matter of time that, if we don't crack Facebook, we will be gone.
Yeah.
And we divided then, and on the other hand, also managing the shareholders, because that was also a very tough time. And some shareholders went against. They wanted basically to kick me out. Because suddenly one of the shareholders said, "Look, we should maybe employ a 25-year-old who understands Facebook." I said, "Okay." I'm also a shareholder. I have no issues with that, as long as the person has also experience with managing a team of 110 people. We were 110 at the time. So I was never defensive of my position. If someone does the job better, great. I don't mind at all. But ultimately, a couple of shareholders were not happy because the decision to fire me was stopped by our largest shareholder, and they sold their shares. They wanted to sell their shares. We bought their shares back because we raised some money in the meantime from Index and from Apex Partners, about $38 million, which we never touched, by the way. The only time we touched the money was to buy back those shares. And those shares later would be worth $1.2 billion. So that was probably one of the best repurchases we have ever done, I think.
Well done.
Yeah.
So how did you manage to sort out this problem? I mean, after it's the beginning of Candy Crush.
It's all about product. So what we did was the following. It's all about product, right? If the product is great and is good and is different from the rest, and you create a great user experience, then marketing is easy.
Yeah.
Our issue was the following, that we wanted to bring our original model to Facebook, but we were not allowed to because there was a win money component. Now, I went there saying, look, our games are on T-Online, they're on Yahoo, they're 100% fine. Now, they're legal, we have all the approvals because they're games of pure skill. But they did not like to offer the games where you could win money on Facebook. So suddenly our core model was not working anymore. So that's why it took us so long. It was not just to bring the games. It was basically reinventing the company, reinventing how you play the games, etc. So what we did is we divided the company, or the development team and creative team, in two parts. 50% continued working on the existing business model, on the existing games. This was really to keep them on a lifeline, to retain generating revenues, to allow the rest of the company to continue investing in R&D, and to basically maintain the rest of the company fundamentally. And the other 50% were then divided into 5 teams, which worked on 5 different experiments. And ultimately, and some experiments didn't go well, actually a few times. And ultimately, after many tries, one of these experiments succeeded in
And when
April.
you talk about an experiment, you don't talk about a game. You're talking about a way to play the game.
Well, it's at the end of the day, it's the same, because we had to create a game which we could offer on Facebook. And so what we did is we took the core game mechanics, which were doing really well, the best games we created on the web in our compete model, and we reproposed them. Instead of having just one level, we created many levels where you would play not anymore in a competition, but in basically with other people, but more or less as you see today on Candy Crush, on a path, right? So, and the first game we launched was a game called Bubble Saga, which we launched in April of 2011.
Yeah.
By the way, a small point here is we bought back the shares in March 2011, so just 1 month before we launched the game. Yeah, and we had no idea basically how this game would perform until we launched it. We had no idea. So we launched it in April of 2011, and that game for the first time showed a key indicator of that a product that basically something is working with users, which is basically retention. So it showed a very high day 2 retention. And then we continued to monitor the retention. Day 7 went very well. Day 30 went very well. So we thought, and then also showed virality. We included also viral loops. And so it really showed that it was doing very well. And so that's where we started then to work. After we cracked retention and the user experience, we worked on the business model. And so we launched a second game called Bubble Witch Saga afterwards, which integrated also basically the guy who, who cracked it was my co-founder, Sebastian. Sebastian Knutsson, who is a genius. And he also is the guy who created Candy Crush later on.
Okay. And a question, Riccardo, how many games do you try before launching officially one game?
It's a very difficult question, meaning, this has changed over time.
Yeah.
Right. So at the beginning, we were actually launching all of them. And then if it didn't work well, we were just basically, not continue marketing it. And that's how. And what we did at the beginning is we launched more than 200 games on the web. And what we did at the beginning was to take the best game mechanics from those 200 games we launched in the past, and we basically reproposed them with the learnings of in what way basically the game works on Facebook. That's why it was lower risk, because we had done a lot of legwork before. And then later when we went to mobile, we then reinvented the model of how to connect, how to play seamlessly cross-platform. And so we proposed the games on mobile where you could play against any or with anyone. Didn't matter whether they were playing on the web, on their computer, or on a mobile device. And that's why mobile actually grew so fast, because we took games that were already very strong and proven before, and we also leveraged the entire user base we had in the meantime built on the web to propel immediately in the charts the games on mobile.
All right. We have many questions from the entrepreneurs following us right now. So, Soren, what was the first product vision of King?
Well, the first product vision was to offer a game platform where you would be able to play with others games which are so-called casual games. So our user base, our target user was mainly female, 25 plus. And where you would play for very small amounts, but fundamentally these amounts would make the game more interesting. We would basically say, okay, if you put something on the plate, you're not just going to drop off in the middle of the game. You're going to play as well as you can, because that competition really counts. So this was the initial idea. And that's how we developed a platform for playing games with more than 200 games on the platform. And then later the model shifted completely from being a platform where you can play any game to an app-centric single game experience.
Okay. And can you keep on this one? Keep on?
Yeah. So basically, imagine that before you would basically be able to play one level only of, let's say, Candy Crush against others. in a very competitive setting where you would only have, for example, 3 minutes to finish the game. And then later, but you would have 200 games to choose from. And then later on, we repropose the same game as an app. So when you go on the Candy Crush app, for example, you only have that game, but you have not only one level, you have thousands of levels now. And you can play with all your friends, not only just on the web, but you can play with your friends on your mobile device or on the web or wherever they are.
All right. Talking about the first game. So the first game you released on Facebook that made you win your bet, basically, after 2 years. So Bubble Saga, you reached up to 1 million active users in 3 months.
No, that game was only a game which then actually was not continued anymore. Bubble Saga, because it didn't have any monetization. Then the second game we launched was Bubble Witch Saga. And in that we integrated all the monetization triggers. And that game basically grew very, very fast. Yeah. And with that game, we basically grew from nowhere to become the number 2 player after Zynga. But Zynga was much bigger than us. They were the market leader at the time on Facebook. And so when they saw that we were basically getting closer meant still they were much, much bigger than us. They copied the game and they released basically a copycat of Bubble Witch Saga in 2012. And that's for the first time where suddenly we were growing like that. And suddenly we started basically flattening the growth. And so that was a big problem suddenly. And that's where we released Candy Crush on the web, on Facebook, but still did not change the trajectory because they had a massive user base until we launched Candy Crush in November of the same year on mobile. And that's where suddenly it was like a hockey stick, as if you put all this information, all this data on user base, on userships, on the users on a chart, it looks as if we had done nothing before for 8 years.
Yeah, because they are leading. And so in terms of impact, some figures on the success of of Candy Crush.
Yeah, so before launching Candy Crush, I don't remember exactly the date. I think we were probably about 20 million users, I think, something like that.
Yeah, it's huge.
Which was good, yeah. But we went up to 500 million users in the space of 6 months. And especially at the beginning, it grew like exponentially. It was unbelievable. So we went from, before launching on Facebook, we were doing about 40-50 million euros in revenues. And this number grew when we launched on Facebook. But suddenly when we launched on mobile, we went up to $2 billion in revenues.
Wow.
With over 40% basic profitability.
Wow. And how did you handle this success?
Oh, we had no time to think about the success. We had to think only about, hey, how do we continue growing the company? And the most important thing was to continue building out the team. And so we basically doubled the size of the team every 6 months. And for doing that, we had to start really recruiting very aggressively. But the key was for us not to reduce the quality of the team, but rather to increase it. And at the time we were in Stockholm, the development was in Stockholm, and it was too small of a market to hire so fast, so many good people. So we had to open up new offices. And so that's why we opened up offices in several places, for example, in Barcelona, in London. We also opened up a studio, not just marketing and central services. And that's where we introduced also processes, or more strict processes, where every person would be interviewed by at least 6 people. And everyone had to basically, have thumbs up. And if one person was disagreeing, then the person would not be admitted. And where the interviews were focused not only on the technical competence, but also on the fit with the team, to make sure that,
If you had to explain me the values behind the culture of King, what are they?
Well, I think that, over time, maybe as a preface, I think that I believe a lot in culture, because it's really the thing that does not change or should not change over time, if it's right. And so we tried always to retain and build out a culture which was what we believe in, which was a culture which is open, a culture which is honest, to first starting from our own people, a culture where you treat everyone with respect, like you want to be treated yourself, and do the same also with our users. And a culture also where making mistakes is not only is okay, but it's part of the game.
How do you encourage that? How do you make this really become a culture to make mistake?
Look, you can do many things. You can do you can employ consultants to write the best culture sheets and to put them up in the company. But if you don't live this, it's all worthless. So I believe fundamentally, and this is my advice to any entrepreneur, is that culture is lived from the top. This means if you're at the top, then you create culture every day with anything you do, with anything you say, with anything you do. And it's as simple as the reason behind is the following. When you grow so fast and when you grow, you bring on board new people. When new people join, when they join a company, they don't know yet how to behave. So they look around and see, okay, what time do people start at work? When do they leave? And am I supposed to sit here and hit my seat? Because that's important, just to show that I'm present. Or people actually don't really care and they just focus on results. How do people go along with expenditures? Am I allowed to buy this? Am I allowed to use this? Even small things like the toilet, what happens, is the toilet clean or not? I was focused on all of that. For example, for me, a quality, if I want to know if a company is well managed or not, and the culture is right, the first thing I do is I go to the toilet. If the toilet is dirty, I already get a sign there that actually there is something wrong in the company.
No way.
Yep. And a few times, and I they're very seldom. I very seldom get angry. I usually never get angry when something doesn't work on the product side or on the marketing side, unless we make the mistakes many times. But I always got really angry when there's the toilet dirty, for example. So it's a sign
I use this to judge a restaurant, for instance, but never.
Yeah, but it's the same for a toilet. And it's the same for any company, because it's missing respect for others. It's meaning basically, and that's what I do not tolerate at all. If someone is missing respect for other people, it doesn't matter who, there is no space in the company for that person. Yeah. If someone makes mistakes, that's absolutely fine, because, I'm the first person making mistakes. And by the way, how you create culture there is to admit it. So you never hide mistakes. You always talk openly about it, because if I'm allowed to make a mistake, anyone else is allowed to make mistakes. Yeah.
I totally get what you mean. All right. And so then you did the largest European IPO
at the time.
Yeah, in 2014.
Yep.
And this must have been like a big thing to go through this process. Do you remember how you felt?
Oh, Jesus, yeah, I do remember very well. Oh my God, yeah. It's actually really, really, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
It took us about 6 months to take the company private.
Yeah.
Sorry, to take the company public. Basically, the whole process of starting from selecting the banks, preparing the books, hiring a CFO, because we had to hire a new CFO with experience on public markets and the team behind. And we did all of this in parallel. So we selected the banks while we didn't have a CFO yet. Apex, one of our largest shareholder at the time, they borrowed us a person from their team to support us on this process. And I mean, it's astonishing how much work actually it takes, and also how much focus it takes from the top, from the leadership.
Yeah.
And then it culminated with us basically doing the tour, flying around from one place to the other, which sounds fun, but actually it's less fun when you do it. It's nice memories, but
once
it's quite stressful when you do it. Yes.
Yeah. And you closed the day 17% down. Well, that's what I've read somewhere.
Yep.
This must have been like super stressful. No?
Look, I always told the team. First of all, visualize the experience. So the experience was we listed on the New York Stock Exchange because they gave us the ticker King, which was pretty cool. The day of the listing, we went there very early in the morning, and outside the New York Stock Exchange is exactly like in the movies. Basically, you had a huge flag with basically King on this massive flag, and then the King characters busy jumping around outside. We went inside. We had breakfast with the CEO of the stock exchange and the team, and we had all the founders there, and families were there. So it was a kind of a celebration. And then the moment of the opening, we were on the balcony and pressed the red button. It's a red button that actually rings the bell physically, and we were all up there, and it was a special experience, exactly like busy in the movies. And then you go down on the floor, and you have these characters, which are real characters, some with mustache, and the typical investment banker kind of or trader kind of outfit. And I bought the first ticket. And then I rang the bell, and as you were saying, suddenly the stock goes down. So not the best of experiences from that point of view, but for me personally, it was the overall experience was kind of overwhelming and so fascinating that I always told the team we should always do what is right for the long term and not just look at the short term. And so I knew already before that the stock exchange is likely to be a bumpy ride, not because of ours, but in general, there is a lot of short-termism in terms of what people want to hear. And I said, look, we should not be defocused by what people want to hear. We should always do what we think is right for the long term of the company.
All right.
Yeah? So, which sometimes is easier to say than actually to do, but because you continuously need to reiterate this concept every time, because there's a lot of pressure to actually to achieve the next quarterly results. And then there was a big bet against us, because people thought that at the time that Candy Crush would be a massive hit, and then it would disappear. And if you look now, actually Candy Crush has been a massive success, and the game is still in top grossing. And this is basically many years after the launch in 2012, and that basically proves that the people at the time were actually wrong after all. But it was a bumpy ride, and part of the bumpy ride was that we missed the first quarter, which is a complete, which is a not to do, right? If you list a company, and so we went through that experience, and then it was a hard work afterwards to reset expectations in a conservative way, so that we could show that actually we are overachieving, and that took some time. But I think I learned more in that experience than in other experiences, and definitely more than if we had not gone through that experience.
Sure.
And then ultimately we ended up selling the company after about, when was it? We listed in March 2014, and we completed the sale in Q1 of 2016.
2 years.
Yeah.
And you sold it to Activision Blizzard, the same group that has Call of Duty, World of Warcraft, for 4.5 billion.
No, 5.9.
5.9. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
And today you have 260 million players using all of your games.
Yep.
What do you do, you personally, today?
Well, I'm out since basically, well, I have now the title of chairman, but I'm not operational anymore. So the new CEO is one of the Activision people with whom actually I negotiated the deal, in fact. And then I said, okay, but if part of the deal is I would like to have him, because he was amazing. He was really good. So he joined first as CFO. It's a guy called Humam Saknini. He joined first as CFO, then he became COO when Stefan Kurgan, the former COO, left. And he was also amazing. And then ultimately when I handed over, basically he became CEO, and he's doing a terrific job, really terrific job. So the company is in really good hands.
What's your secret to not, I mean, to resist to so much pressure every day? Since you,
I think the secret is just try to be yourself, and to do always what you think is right, rather than, and if someone, of course, I always try to do what I think is right, and I say that, but then ultimately, when there is disagreement, then you put a decision to the board, and then the board is the ultimate decision taker for any decision in a company. But in the way how I think, into what I say, people, into the strategies, is to try to do what actually is right, and what I think is right has to start not from what I think is best for myself, but is what is best for the company at any moment in time. And in my view, a company is like a big boat, and you have to think of keeping the boat not only afloat but having the boat go fast. And sometimes there are decisions where you have to decide, hey, I need to, for example, shut down part of the company or fire some people. And it's like, sometimes it hurts. I had to fire a very good friend at the time because we had to change and bring on board new competencies. It was at very early on, but I needed to think at any moment in time what is best for the company, because if you have a hole in the boat, the whole boat goes down. And this includes also myself. So when people came to me saying, I think we should change the CEO, I said, okay, sure, let's do that. I don't mind, but then let's find someone who is good for that. So you should never be protective. Always try to do what is right. Then the biggest shareholder wanted to keep me on board. That's why I stayed ultimately.
All right. Akshay is asking a question. What's the vision for your new investment venture, Sweet Capital?
Yeah. So it's our money only. So it's the money of the Sweet founders, of the King founders. And we focus on trying to do what we think we understand best, which is mobile consumer. So we invest in mobile consumer apps and products where we can apply the key learnings from King, which go from how do I judge if a product is good or not? Can we apply the same level of understanding with metrics like retention, et cetera, et cetera? We can apply the learnings from marketing, how you scale without financing, basically, from 10 million to 100 million per quarter. So actually from 5 million to 100 million per quarter. And how can you do that in a profitable way? And learnings how you can hire the team, use the contacts we have, et cetera, et cetera. And we invest in mobile consumer apps with the exception of games for competitive reasons, because I have a non-compete.
All right. And Julien is asking, what are the future trends, according to you, Riccardo, in the gaming industry?
The gaming industry? Well, I think, first of all, in terms of platform, I think that by mobile now, is there a new platform that is going to disrupt mobile? Probably unlikely, I think. I think if you want to reach really millions and millions of players, mobile is still probably the best. I think is a platform that is going to be there to stay. I think that playing with others is and will be a key component in games to make them more fun. So if I had to start a new thing, a new game, I would always focus on something that is focused on mobile, that is focused on playing with others. Now, this said, there's a lot of variety in terms of what you can do. We focused on so-called casual games, that are games that are puzzle-like games, with a logic challenge behind, that you can play over a very short period of time and are completed in a short period of time. These games have been around for decades. So we have not invented the casual genre, but you can reinvent how you play these games. And these games have been continuously evolving over time. So one of these evolutions was Candy Crush, but there are many other evolutions. So I think that is one typology of games. And then there's another typology of games which are more focused on a younger target group, kids, mainly also male. Those are games, for example, more shooter kind of games. So those are different typologies of games. But I think that the beauty about games is that if you want to succeed, you need really to reinvent and be different from what is out there. Of course, now it's more complicated, more difficult than at the time to succeed because there's a lot of competition in the market on mobile. But I believe that if a game is good and different and innovative, you can always succeed, and you can scale the game with marketing.
So we have a question from Pavel, who run an indie game studio in Paris. He's developing his mobile game, and he's asking like, should he go to capital firms to build and expand his team, and who should he go to, or should he try to avoid it at the beginning, like at the very beginning? I guess that's the question.
It's difficult to tell you the answer. My thoughts on this are the following. I think that the most important thing I would check is how is the game they have now performing. If the game is doing really well in terms of retention,
Mm-hmm.
and by really well, I mean if it has a data retention which is at least over 40%,
Mm-hmm.
then I think I would consider possibly not actually getting any money. Yeah. So I think the best guys in industry, well, I think they did an incredible job here are the guys from Playrix,
Mm-hmm.
and they basically managed to retain 100% ownership, and the guys are killing it really, so doing a really incredible job. And so I think if you have a game that monetizes very well, you can actually scale it exponentially with very little money actually.
Mm-hmm.
Because the money basically the game refinances itself. It's like the old story of the chessboard. When the king asked the peasant who helped him, basically, what would you like as a gift from me? You can ask me for anything. And he asked, I would like a piece of grain. And they said, yeah, but I would like you and a chessboard. So please put one piece on the first place, and then on the second one you put 2, on the third one you put 4, on the fourth one you put 8. So this is basically like the virus, exponential growth.
Mm-hmm.
If you do that, then it becomes massive. That's what we did with King. Every time that marketing worked, we doubled up the marketing. Every time we doubled it. And that's how you can scale very fast, profitably.
And I have a question for you, Riccardo, because when you run a company like King, you have very different types of people in the company. You have the designers who are much more creatives. I mean, especially when it comes from when we're talking about games as crazy as Candy Crush, and they need a certain environment. They need freedom. They need confidence. They need fun. And you also have the distribution team and the business focus teams, the ones that are focused on the KPIs. And these two, how do you manage to make sure that they work well together?
Well, I think that you give them freedom to operate and experiment, and of course there are timelines, but the timelines often are not. It takes as long as it takes at the end of the day. Yeah. So, and at some point the difficult call is to say, okay, actually we don't think this game is going to work anymore. But that's a call that's always done together with the team and not just someone that tells you. So the plan where you say, okay, you need to be ready by X day, and then on X day plus 1, we're going to put $100 million of marketing on the game, doesn't exist.
No.
No? Because you need first to make sure that the game is performing well, and once it's performing well, then you know that you can improve it further with additional work on the game and refining the game mechanics, etc.
Mm-hmm.
But until that moment where you know that actually it's performing well, we think we can invest more. It's very difficult really to nail them down to a specific timing. So there is of course pressure, but the pressure comes more in terms of, hey, we want to achieve this budget, this target. So let's make sure that one of these games at least works. So we had always several bets at the same time, and that's how we managed this process of basically uniting a marketing plan and marketing targets and marketing budgets and overall budgets with launches also, by having several teams. And sometimes none of the games worked. and then we had just to reduce the marketing spend or move the marketing spend to existing games rather than to new games.
Get it. And how do you see the post-COVID era? Like, what will it change for the startups? What do you see that could be a good trend, and how do you prepare for it?
Yeah, I think that since most companies, startups we are talking to at this moment, I guess, are digital startups. I think that the post-COVID era is actually great for them for fundamentally two reasons. The first reason is that users are spending much more time at home and much more time online or on their mobile device than before. And I think that if you see the usership of all the digital platform has grown exponentially, it's grown massively over the last 6 months.
Yeah.
And secondly, with the quantitative easing and with there's a lot of money in the market now, and equity is very expensive for this reason, public equity, I mean, and the interest rates, if you put the money in the bank, are even negative. So you make less money if you put the money in a bank than if you put it at home. Let's put it this way. So if you have this, basically meaning that there are fewer opportunities for investors to invest, and so there's a lot of appetite now for venture capital and to invest money into startups. So it's kind of pretty much a great time now for tech startups to raise money and to launch the products. And the other third reason, actually, which was really clear in the first half of this year, usually what you see that marketing is very expensive in Q4 because all the FMCG brands with physical products, they buy the market, they buy TV advertising and digital advertising. Now, usually Q1 is the cheapest quarter of the year for marketing because all the FMCG brands after the Christmas period, basically they reduce their budgets. But then the budgets go up again in Q2 and Q3 and Q4. Now, in Q2 this year, the costs were even cheaper than in Q1 because all the FMCG brands, still no one could go out, basically save the money. All the travel companies, they save their budgets. This means that if you have a product which is digital, not only users are much more open to have more time, but also marketing is much cheaper. So it's like really a golden time now, really, for tech startups.
Cool. That's optimistic. And
yep, very optimistic.
Okay, I know that at King.com you are very respectful of gender equality, and that you have a lot of women in the team. And regarding diversity, how do you think startups can change the lack of diversity in their teams? Do you have any recommendations on that?
Well, I think startups usually have a tougher time because they can't afford the luxury, in brackets. So often they need to do what is pragmatic. They need to find the people that, and you start usually hiring people you know very well because you worked with them before. But I think from day one, you need to have in mind that it's actually a really important component because you have a better quality. You have better quality, and also the team is actually it makes the entire culture in the company much better. So if you have it's like in a society which is very, very much the same. You don't have enough critical thinking. You don't have enough. For example, in our business, it has been always an issue where it's very difficult to find developers that are women.
True, yeah.
Mainly from one reason, that fewer women are attracted to become a developer, a programmer. But look at our clients. 70% of our users are female. So how can we create games for female if no one is on the game creation side that is female? Right? So that's why we always pushed from day one. We try to have more female in the team. Sometimes it's easier in specific teams, for example, in finance, in legal, in marketing, to have a more diverse team. In other areas like development, it has been always more tricky. But what you can do there is and you can afford to do that really when you're growing up, when you're out of the startup phase, and that's where you need just to put yourself as targets in recruitment to say, look, I'm not going to do interviews unless I have 10 candidates which are also female for that position. And that puts basically more burden on HR, and they need to do a better job in finding more potential candidates. Now, what is really, really important is because someone is female or from a diverse group, which is not just female, then this is not a reason why they get chosen at no point in time. So it's really important for whoever gets the job that they know the only reason why they got the job is because they're the best. Yeah, that is really, really important. But unless you put enough candidates in the pipe at the top, you will never have basically a more balanced team.
So you need to go actively and find people.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I believe in one thing which is really important. I think that the amount of smart people is the same across all the countries, across all the genders, across all the sexual preferences, etc., etc. It doesn't matter. It's the same. This means you need to have enough candidates in the starting positions if you want to have, and that's a big opportunity, because if you do that, then you can really get people who are really, really smart, and also a smarter decision at the end, because you have more diversity of views, a wider view, which at the end of the day reflects the world out there. If you want to have a product for the world and you do not reflect the world out there, it's more difficult.
Talking about that, we have a question from Pavel asking, do game studios have a responsibility to support social change, social movement? You're doing entertainment basically with your game, but do you think games could have an impact and could help the change?
Well, I think so. Yeah, I think so. I think number one, you should avoid negative impact by having games that have a negative impact on the world. Yeah, and there can be many, many things. So you should always think of creating something that is fun for the players to play. That was at least our play. But secondly, I think we reached 500 million people, so on a monthly basis.
Wow.
So when you have that, you can do actually a lot of things. So what we did, for example, we raised also money for charity, for specific causes, etc. So I think that people nowadays, not nowadays, but actually from ever, in the team, they want to work for good companies. And good companies are companies that do the right things, not only for the team, but also for society.
That's interesting, because what you're saying is it's not in the game itself that you change the game, but it's one with your game. First, you are successful, and then with the success, you invest money in things that matter to you, and don't try to do both at the same time, like using a game, for instance, or you can, but it's not the way you did it.
Well, I think that a game needs, first of all, to be fun. If you want to achieve, for example, often I get the question, well, can you create an educational game? Yes, you can. You can use game mechanics to make education more fun, to make education better, for sure. But if you want to create a game that is fun and education at the same time, it might be trying to square the circle. So I always try to separate in some way. So if I want to give money for charity, I do that with my personal money, for example. Yeah. So I make money and then I give money for charity. That's an easier way rather than trying to create something that squares all of the circles. I think the games have to be fun, first of all. But when you do that, you don't want to create something that is negative at any moment in time as a game. And secondly, you have opportunities then to also leverage the user base you have, the money you make, to do a lot of good.
Perfect.
And that, I think, is something that should be anyone. Now I have time, and for me, what really gives pleasure is really, at the end of the day, really to help also others and to leave a legacy in some way. And that's partially what we do also with Sweet Capital. So
I kept you longer than I should have. It's already 2:50, 2:30, and we spent 1 hour together. It was a real pleasure. My last question to you, Riccardo, is what is the song that you love to hear to put the vibes up every day, right now?
Yes. So I love, and during all the difficult times, both at school and other times, the songs which really give me power is basically Pink Floyd. So I love Pink Floyd, all their songs. I know there is an album called The Wall, which is fantastic. It's quite an angry artist or angry band, but I love it. And I'm currently in these COVID times, I'm trying to learn piano since 2 months. So I'm learning now a song called Gig in the Sky by the Pink Floyd.
Cool. We're going to hear Gig in the Sky. Gig in the
Gig
Sky.
in the Sky.
All right. And everybody, you've been here listening to Riccardo. You can go now to networking and meet with different people, connect, maybe start a business together, exchange. Did you like what Riccardo said? Do you agree? Do you disagree? It's time to exchange. You just click on networking and you'll have a chat roulette that randomly will introduce you to new people every 5 minutes. It was a real pleasure, Riccardo.
Thank you so much, Alice, and congrats to all of you. And
see you soon, maybe anywhere in Europe.
Sorry?
See you soon.
Yes, absolutely. I hope so. After hopefully COVID is finished at some point. Good luck and stay safe to everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Riccardo. See you.
Yeah, I'd rather